the state of wetlands and the trends in key features through a limited number of indicators. And this observatory also should be able to feed and orient both the Medwet strategy itself, but also public policies in different developing countries. And not only environmental policies, but sectoral policies like land use planning, water sector, and many sectoral policies. And this observatory has two main targets. First of all, and this is the real main target, decision makers, so people who are in charge of the development and implementation of these policies, and as a second level, large public through the media. Okay, this is just an introduction of why have we developed this observatory, and now I will give the floor to Thomas Galewski to go more in depth in the presentation of this observatory.
So hi, I'm Thomas Galewski. So I work in the coordination unit of the observatory at Tour du Valar. And what I wanted to do is to show some of the results we got in the two past years on Mediterranean wetlands and on their status. So I had a choice. I could show 30 slides to show you the results, but I think it's perhaps boring, so I decided to show you one of the movie we made within the observatory. But first, I just would like to say again that the observatory is a large partnership. We are more than 25 institutions working together. There are, of course, technical and institutional partners. They can provide us with data, for example. And we have also financial partners, some of them helping us from the beginning. And with all these partners, at the beginning of the observatory, something like 3 years ago, we decided of the objectives of the observatory. So there are 3 objectives. The first one, of course, is to provide information about the status and trends of Mediterranean wetlands, but also track the threats impacting wetlands and actions promoting their protection and wise use. And the third objective is to assess the level of consideration of wetlands in the development world in order to see if the image of wetlands is better now than it used to be in the past. Altogether, the MW coordination unit and partners, we decided also of a conceptual model. So we identified 25 indicators we could monitor. 17 of them were already monitored in the first report published this year. This set of indicators is based on a conceptual model which is well known to decision makers. It is the driver pressure state impact response model. It is a model which is used by other international monitoring systems, like, for example, the European environmental agencies. The Convention on Biological Diversity is using something quite similar. And so we adapted this model to the Mediterranean scale and to the context of wetlands. For example, if we start with pressures, we identify the pressures impacting wetlands. For example, like land management, agriculture, fishing, hunting. We try to define indicators monitoring these different pressures. But we also looked at drivers, because these pressures are the direct consequences of root causes called drivers. For example, it can be the development and consumption model chosen by governments, the demography, climate change, political decisions. So drivers result in pressures. Pressures impact the state of wetlands. So we decided we will monitor 3 components of wetlands: species, water, and ecosystems. When the state of wetlands is deteriorated, there is an impact on human well-being. So this is the concept of ecosystem services. And when the human well-being is deteriorating, the society has to develop a response to try to make drivers and pressure less strong. So to show you quite briefly some of the indicators we define, let's start with the driver indicator. For example, this is the human demography. With the help of one of our partners, which is Plan Bleu, with their data, we try to address the current demographic rate around the Mediterranean basin. So the Mediterranean basin is already one of the most densely populated areas in the world, especially along the coast and along main rivers like the Nile River. But today, the demography is still very high, less in Europe, but higher in southern and eastern countries. Another indicator, this time a pressure indicator. This one is the use of renewable water resources. So this directly impacts wetlands, because when you use water for human activities, there is less water available for the environment and so for wetlands. So here you can see still with data coming from Plan Bleu that there are some areas in the Mediterranean basin where almost all water available is used every year. So there is almost no water left for the environment and for wetlands in these parts of the basin. To assess the state of wetlands and to assess biodiversity, one of the indicators we developed is the Living Planet Index, developed by WWF and calculated at a global scale. But in our case, we calculated it for Mediterranean wetlands. So with some partners like Wetlands International and data we already had at the Tour du Vala, we managed to produce a Living Planet Index for water birds and for other vertebrate groups living in wetlands in the Mediterranean. So now for the indicator of impact, so ecosystem services, it was more complicated because there is no, if I'm right, indicator developed yet for ecosystem services. So we decided that we should monitor at least 4 services given by wetlands to humans. And one of them is the educational and touristic role of wetlands. And this one, we are currently working on the development of this indicator, and we should get results quite soon. And at last, yes, so the indicator corresponding to the response of the society. For example, so there is protection of wetlands, and one indicator we developed is the number and surface of Ramsar sites in Mediterranean countries. And so you can see the evolution of the number of sites, Ramsar sites in the Mediterranean. And so the level of consideration of wetlands by governments. And yeah, just I wanted to say that with other partners, we also decided of a communication strategy. So we decided of different communication outputs. One of them is a newsletter, which is sent every 2 months to our partners to inform us about our activities. There is, of course, a report published at the beginning of this year, the Mediterranean Wetlands Outlook, in two volumes, one for decision makers, one for scientists with more technical details. So these 2 volumes of this Mediterranean Wetlands Outlook is available in the back of the room. So I think all of you could get a copy of this. We developed fact sheets with a result of each of the indicators we developed, which are quite simply explained. We also started a thematic collection with the first issue being on biodiversity, where you can find more details on this thematic. There is a movie I'm going to show you, and of course the observatory tried to be represented in many international conferences like Ramsar, and of course, and even the World Water Forum, where we can talk to decision makers more easily to develop our survey. So I'm going to show you the movie now.
water is the source of all life. Biodiversity and our own human well-being depend on it. Yet water supplies are dwindling, particularly in the Mediterranean region. The quality and sustainability of this key resource depend heavily on natural wetlands, such as marshes, lakes, lagoons, peatlands, chans, sandpits, and groundwater, as well as man-made wetlands such as rice fields, oases, and dam reservoirs. Wetlands are also the ecosystems that provide the most to humankind: clean water, food production, wildlife for hunting and fishing, berries and fibre for picking, drought and flood regulation, and excellent sites for tourism, relaxation, and contemplation. More than 50% of wetlands have disappeared over the past century, and their decline and deterioration continue. There are many direct causes of wetland decline, including pollution, overuse of water resources, littering, poor wastewater treatment, hydroelectric infrastructure, urban sprawl, and the use of land for farms or tourist resorts. While agriculture is the sector that has the most impact on wetlands and water, there's growing pressure on them due to urbanization, public infrastructure, and tourism. These human impacts reduce wetland functions and services, making them less able to contribute to sustainable human development. The main causes of these trends are short-sighted economic development models, the fact that wetlands are quite low on political agendas, poor governance, land planning and zoning, the limited enforcement of water and environmental laws, and the splitting of stakeholders into conservationists and developers. Population growth and climate change are accentuating these tendencies. Humans need wetlands, and there's an increasing number of conservation initiatives. International agreements such as the Ramsar Convention, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the World Heritage Convention, the Millennium Development Goals, and European directives reinforce each other and encourage countries to better protect their natural capital. The MedWet initiative, which is the first of its kind in the world, has been bringing together Mediterranean basin stakeholders for more than 20 years to enhance the conservation and wise use of wetlands. The number of Ramsar sites in the Mediterranean region doubled between 2000 and 2011. Today they cover more than 6 million hectares of territory. In addition, the number of protected wetlands has increased nationally. Environmental outreach and education programs have positively impacted many people and encouraged decision makers to favour the environment. Environmental considerations are more integrated into local development planning schemes. Civil society has emerged as a key partner in development and conservation issues. What are the current status and trends in wetlands in our region today? For the wetlands that have managed to survive, there's a great deal of pressure in terms of the quality and quantity of water, with a major contrast between the north and the south. With 7% of the world population but only 3% of its freshwater resources, the Mediterranean basin is one of the most severely affected regions in the world in terms of a potential lack of water. Nearly 60% of the water-poor population is concentrated in the Mediterranean, particularly in the southern and southeastern parts of the region. The quantity of water available for the environment and wetlands is decreasing. Stream flows have been significantly affected by the water drawn from rivers and the dams built on them. The overexploitation of surface water and groundwater also represents a serious danger. With 92% of its renewable water currently being used, North Africa has already greatly exceeded its water sustainability threshold. While water quality in terms of nutrients and heavy metals has generally improved since the 1980s in Europe. Not enough knowledge is available concerning the rest of the region and other pollutants concerned to draw accurate conclusions. Significant differences in biodiversity trends can be seen between the western and the eastern Mediterranean regions. The relative stability of vertebrate populations measured in the Mediterranean basin hides contrasting trends between the west and the east. Some waterbird populations are in good shape, particularly in the western part of the Mediterranean basin, while other groups, such as reptiles, amphibians and fish, have seen their numbers drop by 40% since 1970. These trends have important impacts on freshwater ecosystems and the well-being of populations. The loss of the Mediterranean biodiversity is mainly due to the standardization of land management practices. Social tension and economic losses arise when local planning for protected and non-protected areas does not sufficiently take account of the local population's needs. People are increasingly confronted by the scarcity or even lack of water. On the other hand, the populations of certain flagship species, such as pelicans and greater flamingos, have increased. Outreach and educational programs have enabled an organized civil society to emerge, which has recognized expertise in environmental matters. The development of the sustainable tourism sector generates local economic benefits. However, the current initiatives in favor of wise management and use of wetlands will not alone enable future generations to derive their well-being from them. What then are the key messages for the future? First of all, wetlands must be saved. Because the ongoing degradation and loss of wetlands would cost much more to humanity than their conservation and restoration. Efforts must focus on the most threatened wetlands, which are in the inhabited coastal zones, river valleys, and arid regions. They can be saved by drawing up and implementing appropriate policies, legal frameworks, and governance measures, by helping conservationists and socio-economic developers collaborate inside and outside protected areas, by encouraging civil society to participate more actively, by improving wetland monitoring so that it becomes a management tool that can effectively influence land use planning and other decisions. And the benefits they provide to people today must be maintained for future generations. Wetland biodiversity provides essential resources to people living in the Mediterranean region. Most Mediterranean agriculture, which is an important sector for the economy and employment, is based on water resources that cannot be conserved unless wetlands are managed sustainably. Rational ways to use groundwater and restore floodplains along waterways. Improving and monitoring water quality are two priorities that must be achieved. These actions will require the enforcement of international and national regulations. Sustainable tourism can effectively promote the natural, aesthetic, and cultural values of wetlands while enhancing economic and social development and raising awareness about the need to protect them. We must get mobilized. Confronted with these major challenges, it's urgent for decision makers, donor agencies, scientists, and wetland managers and users to unite and take action together. First, we must objectively identify the changes that have already occurred in order to understand what's been responsible for these changes. Then, we can plan more sustainable local development. By discovering the paths that move us forward, we can continue down them together in the future.
hearing from Thomas and this short film, I think now we have a clear view, an overview of what is this Mediterranean Wetlands Observatory, how it is structured, and what are the main results of the first report. And as Thomas did, I invite you to, at the end of the meeting, and when you want to get copies of, so here you have the first